Hi, and welcome to my June wrap-up. I had a fairly good reading month in June. I read 12 books. I started out with this book called Deconverted by Seth Andrews. And this is a book about how he became an atheist, his journey from Christian to non-belief. And I liked it for the sake of it being personal, because who can argue a personal story? But the arguments and his reasoning, I mostly didn't find it convincing at all. So last month I read Equal is Unfair, and so this month I picked up On Inequality by Harvey G. Frankfurt. He is the author of On Bullshit as well, and I was excited about what he thought about inequality. This was a pretty good read, but he has this style that is not always equally engaging, and I'm not totally agreeing with him at every point, but still a good read if you are interested in the theme. Then I finished a book by Arthur Schopenhauer called The Wisdom of Life and Consoles and Maxims. And this is a book about philosophy, happiness and life and everything that goes into that. It's not a very easy read, but I managed to finish it. Then I read this book that I have seen a lot of people read, and it is called The Almost Nearly Perfect People by Malcolm Booth. Behind the myth of the Scandinavian utopia. And since I am very much Scandinavian, I am half Finnish and half Norwegian, I do find myself laughing a lot when I read this book, and I think I identify more as the Finnish part than the Norwegian, and I think they are a little bit unequally accurate. The different aspects of the different countries are a little bit different. Like Denmark, where he is living, he is very psychological and finds a lot of things how people are thinking and feeling. But in Norway, he's talking more about the oil industry and the money and the socialistic state and politics. As in Finland, he is more again back to how people are, in the sense that they are more introverted and stuff like that. So he weights different things on the different countries, and sometimes it's good, but sometimes it also seems like he hasn't done enough research on every country that he's trying to write about. But overall it was a really fun and good read. Then I read The Little Black Book of Lawyer's Wisdom by Tony Lyons. And this is just a book of quotes from lawyers, basically. Then I read another slightly controversial book, and this is called The Moral Case of Fossil Fuels by Alex Epstein. And I really like that he focuses on the morals of using fossil fuels, and he also touches the theme of global warming, and it gives like the other side of the story that is not so much highlighted in the media, and he makes a fairly good case for it. It may be sometimes a little bit on the surface, but it's still a good enough and easy read to like make you think that there may be something more to the story than what the media is trying to show. So I recommend this if you haven't thought about this side of the equation. The next book is about history, and it is David Bentley Hart that wrote a book called The Story of Christianity, a history of 2000 years of the Christian faith. And this is basically 2000 years in a slight kind of a thick book. It's hard to write a book that covers so much of history, even though it's focused on one faith. So he has to be really fast and broad and try to encompass everything into this storyline. So I don't think he managed that very well, but it gives you like a overview of history, not only Europe but also the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Church, the Western Church, the Church in India, and also China and stuff like that, all the way from like first century to modern age. But I don't really see the point of making a book like this, because it is so superficial and it's so many dates, so many politics involved, so much that I don't really interest in when I want to read about the story of Christianity. So it's I'm a little meh about this. Then I read this short book called Wisdom, God's Golden Key to Success by Mike Murdoch. And as you see from the cover, I think you can judge it by the cover, because it is about wisdom as a means to an end, and the end is like happiness and wealth and success, more than wisdom being a goal in itself. And I think that side of this book was a little bit too much, and a little bit unbiblical as well. But there are still some good parts that kind of redeem that side of the book. But it's a really easy read, and yeah. So to weight up that book, I read this other one. It's called Where Wisdom is Found, Christ in Ecclesiastes. And this takes the other approach, as wisdom being the goal, and that the earthly things are simply vanity, as the preacher in Ecclesiastes tried to tell us, and that these earthly things are just passing away, but it is the wisdom from God that prevails. So this is a great way to see another view on that aspect. Where this book fails, it is that it tries in every chapter to like force in the view that Christ is in this chapter, and then it gets to the New Testament and show like this is Christ in the chapter, and this is fulfilled in Christ, and all this, and it's a little bit forced because it is so often he does it when it's not really apparent in the text. So he is like doing it too much. Otherwise, it was a really good book. Then I read an Andy Stanley book. He has written this book with Lane Jones, and it's called Communicating for a Change. This is a two-part book. The first half is fiction, and the second half is like the non-fiction explanation of the fiction. And so it's like the first part is like an allegory to the ways of communicating that he then explains more later. And it works kind of good in this book, although it is a little bit double up with things, but still it stacks maybe a little bit better when you have this story to refer to. And it was a really good book about his style of preaching, and he is a really good communicator, so I think we all have a lot to learn from this one. And then I read Aristotle for Everybody by Mortimer J. Adler. Difficult Thought Made Easy. And this is kind of a guide to Aristotle's philosophy. Most of the things that he have written about in a good way, so that you get like the overview. Sometimes it is kind of easy, other times it's a little bit deeper, and so it's a good way to get introduced with Aristotle. He also puts in the back and like index about which book of Aristotle's tell about which things, which themes he's talking about in this book. So it's a great way to get into Aristotle without reading his own writings that may be a little bit difficult to read. And then lastly, I picked up David Kinnaman's book called You Lost Me, Why Young Christians Are Leaving Church and Rethinking Faith. So this is the follow-up book to his previous book called Unchristian. And the Unchristian book was about how unchurched people think about church. So how do an not Christian think about Christianity? And that's like from the outside looking in. And this is from the inside, and how Christians that are leaving church and how they think about church, why are they leaving church, and reasons they give for searching for meaning and searching for for life outside of the boundaries of the church. And this is a really good book because the Barna Group is one of the few institutions that do a lot of quantitative research about church culture and Christianity and Christian people. So it gives you a lot of insight into this, into how people think. And I think it's really great that books like this exist. So I do recommend this book, but I think the Unchristian book was slightly better. And that was every 12 book I read this month. I hope you liked this wrap up, and I see you next time. Goodbye.